Everyone in the world today suffers from some kind of fear. However, about 4 to 5% experience a more severe form of fear known as phobias. Some of the most common phobias are claustrophobia, agoraphobia, which is the fear of public places, and arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Then there are the more uncommon phobias, such as peladophobia, the fear of bald people, or geniophobia, the fear of chins. There is even a name for the fear of Friday the 13th, paraskidikatriophobia. According to the latest count, there was a total of 530 named phobias. However, my particular phobia is so rare that it doesn't even have a name. It is simply called the fear of baseballs. That's right, you heard me, the fear of baseballs. I know it sounds stupid, but it's true. I am terrified of baseballs. Even holding one in my hand sends shivers down my spine. People don't understand this. They do not understand that this is a real fear. I know it's been said that the only thing to fear is fear itself, but that's not true. I'm not scared of being scared of baseballs. I'm scared of the ball itself, this hard, round object that is usually flying fast through the air. But some people fight to the death with me about this. For example, just this weekend, I was at my friend's apartment, and they found out that I have an extreme fear of baseballs. So what do? They decide they're going to help cure me of this fear by playing catch with the ball over my head. I get so scared that I have to leave the room and sit on the stairway. And believe me, this is not the first time that this has happened. Now, you may be wondering how I acquired this phobia. I was about 4 years old and on a t-ball team. I was just learning, so my catching skills weren't quite as good as they needed to be. Then, one day at practice, some guy threw a ball at me as hard as he could. It hit me directly in the head and knocked me out cold. Needless to say, I didn't stick with the sport, and ever since then, I've been scared to death of baseballs. Now, it's not like I hate the sport of baseball. I'm a huge Chicago Cubs fan. I can just never attend the games in person. In conclusion, my unusual fear of baseballs is something real that I have to live with. And while it is inconvenient at times, like when I can't attend the Cubs games or occasionally have to leave social situations, I take comfort in the fact that at least I'm not afraid of bald people, or public places, or spiders, or even Friday the 13th. So I suppose it could be worse.
Gordon Parks once said, "I choose my camera as a weapon against all the things I dislike about America: poverty, racism, discrimination." Parks, an extraordinary photographer, gives insight into my character, passions, and concerns in this one profound quotation. I began photography during the fall of my freshman year in high school. After learning simple techniques of printing in the darkroom and studying the works of influential photographers, I developed an interest in this art that I've continued to pursue ever since. In addition to taking 3 other photo courses, I also worked as a photographer and even received some awards for some of my photographs. My camera is therefore an effective tool that expresses my values, ambitions, and views in a literal sense. Being able to capture an idea or moment in a tangible art has always amazed me. The product that I create by the snap of a shutter greatly describes the way I see the world around me. The different angles, the way I choose to frame a photo, and my subject matter all shed light in describing who I am as a person. By photographing the world around me, I can also express my sense of beauty. This may include an abstract silhouette of the contours of a woman's body, the way the sun accents a stairwell at a certain time of day, the motion of water flowing down a channel of rocks, or the smile in a child's face. My camera sheds light on my emotions and concerns as well. It can describe a feeling or an issue in a single moment: the loneliness of a stark, dreary winter day, or the hunger in a homeless child's eyes. So you can see, photography is an outlet for my energy, my ideas, my creativity, and even my frustrations. Through the lens of a camera, I can articulate my feelings and express myself to the world.
Someone once said, "You don't really know a person until you walk a mile in their shoes." Whoever said this must have met many a person like me. Where one's shoes have been and what they have done can give you a great deal of insight into a person. I think my shoes reveal a lot about me. not only my everyday activities and hobbies, but the events that have shaped my inner self. If you closely examine my shoes, you'll notice many things that connect me to what I do. I am an artist. You may see a speck of paint that's fallen from my brush as I've worked on my latest still life oil painting. Or you may notice a fair amount of clay, a result of my aggressive wrestling with the medium on a potter's wheel. Also evident on my shoes is my major here on campus. I'm a meat and animal science major, and my shoes bear full documentation of my involvement in this program. The shoelaces are frayed from the sheep that chew on them when I work in the barns. The leather is marred from the hooves of animals stepping on my feet. If you're unfortunate enough, you might see something in the treads that I accidentally stepped in. The exterior of my shoe can tell you a lot about what I do, but it also can provide clues to who I am and where I have been. I have always been an explorer and a traveler. My father says that I was born under a wandering star. My shoes have been on my feet for many of my spiritual and physical wanderings. They've walked up into the Alps, across the cliffs of Ireland, and through 14 countries. They've been on numerous backpacking trips throughout the nation and on hikes in the northern Wisconsin woods. They've been witnesses to archaeology digs and rowing regattas. They were on my feet the day I took my first hike with my fiancé and the day we took the walk that ended in his proposal. So you can see, my shoes have been through a lot, and they're beginning to show the wear and tear a bit. They have been witnesses to my everyday adventures and the epic journeys that have shaped my life. You could learn a lot about me by looking at my shoes, but you could learn a great deal more by walking a few miles in them.
As you hit the road with your best friend in a trip cross-country in an old convertible, you see so many different sights that it's easy to overlook the one constant that is always in the same place and that is always there. The lane divider is always present and dead center in the middle of the road. Our classmate Beth Mahalski fits right in the middle, just like the lane divider. Beth was born right in between her older sister Katie and her younger brother Max by her parents Carol and Phil. Perhaps it is not surprising then that when it comes to having fun, Beth usually sticks to the middle of the road. Even though she is a shy person, she loves to goof around and have a good time. She loves any water sport, whether it's water skiing, swimming, or riding a wave runner, but she won't take it to the extreme by bungee jumping or skydiving. On the other hand, you won't catch Beth sitting around all day turning into a couch potato. In fact, one of Beth's favorite activities is playing competitive volleyball. Her love for this game gives her a thirst comparable to the one you would get if you were on the open road on a hot day. And when you speed up while driving on the road, the lines speed faster too. This same thing happened to Beth while she played varsity volleyball in high school for 3 years. The competition increased, and so did the level of play. She loves the game and plays with a fierce passion, but she knows it's not everything in life. She thought long and hard about whether she was going to play here at the university, but her thirst for the game was conquered by her hunger to achieve academic success, and so she decided to focus solely on her schoolwork. Beth followed a road to college that was already paved, and to her, very familiar. She was born and raised here in Madison, Wisconsin, and she attended Edgewood High School where she was a superb student. When it came time for college, she chose to stay close to home and attend the University of Wisconsin. But just because Beth is going to college close to home doesn't mean that she will never move in another direction. She aspires to become an interior decorator and designer in a large city such as New York. While there's no way to know whether she will in fact achieve this dream one day, we can all be sure that as Beth travels down the road of her life, she will be steady and constant as that middle lane divider.
As our University Marshal, Professor Dawson, escorts him forth, please join us in welcoming Mr. Sajid Shenoy, our student speaker for the 1996 exercises.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, faculty, staff, students, ladies and gentlemen, and most of all, the class of 1996. I can visualize the scene again and again. 11:30 p.m., Saturday night, the 15th of August, 1992, Bombay International Airport, India. I was leaving home for the University of Richmond. And as I said that final goodbye to my parents, my family, and my friends, and as I saw hope, expectation, even a tinge of sadness in their eyes, and as I stepped aboard the Boeing 747 in front, I knew my life had changed forever. The next 36 hours on board the aircraft were a time of questions, of concerns, of tremendous uncertainty. Had I made the right choice in leaving my parents, my family, my home? Had I made the right choice in leaving my country, my culture, my background? Had I made the right choice in choosing the University of Richmond? And then, of course, there was that one nagging question, that one overriding concern. As one of only 3 Indian students on a Richmond campus of 3,000, would I ever fit in? My country was different, my culture was different, my experiences were different, my background was different, my language was different, my accent was different. Would I ever fit in? And so here I was, high above the clouds, grappling with these questions of culture, of interaction, of ethnicity. And what I didn't know was that 30,000 feet below on the ground, the world was faced with these very questions. The question of culture, the question of interaction. And so whether my aircraft took off from Bombay, where the Hindus and the Muslims lived together in a most fragile peace, or whether my aircraft was over Africa, where the Hutus and Tutsis of Rwanda and Burundi had this long-standing animosity, or whether my aircraft was over Bosnia, where the Serbs, the Croats, the Muslims and the Bosnians had broken yet another truce. The question was the same. Could different cultures ever come together to reinforce one another? Ladies and gentlemen, 4 years after that bumpy aircraft ride, this young Indian student had found his answer. He had been witness to the 4 most spectacular years of his life. The academics were great, the extracurriculars were great, his graduate school plans were great. But what left an indelible mark on his mind was none of this. Not the GPA, not Stanford, no. Instead, it were those special moments, those moments of human interaction, those human relationships that can never quite be translated into words. The time this young Indian student spent his first Thanksgiving dinner with his debate team coach. That Thanksgiving evening when I had my first American turkey and saw my first American football game, not knowing the difference between a tackle and a touchdown. And yet, all of a sudden, just like this very different Indian student had become an inherent part of the great American tradition of giving thanks. The time I spent my first Christmas Eve with my journalism professor. That Christmas evening, when the relationship wasn't of a faculty member and a student anymore, but of 2 buddies who fought fiercely over every point in ping pong. The time I had a long and honest talk with an American friend on the eve of a calculus exam. I didn't learn much calculus that night, but what I did learn was that as different as we are, different countries, different cultures, different continents, inherently, we're still the same. The time in December '92, when India was hit by communal riots, when violence and bloodshed was but a few hundred yards from my family and my home, and when my fantastic roommate from freshman year sat up the entire night, giving me hope, strength, and courage at every step. Yes, 4 years after that bumpy aircraft ride, I have found the answer to culture. I have found that it has taken just a little understanding, just a little sensitivity, just a little open-mindedness, just a little empathy on the part of this community, this University of Richmond community, to change my life like never before. I have found it makes no difference what culture you follow, what your background is, what your experiences are, what language you speak, what accent you have. The commonality of the human bond far transcends these superficial differences. And yet, look around at the world today. Look around at the very regions that were faced with the same question of culture that I was faced with 4 years ago. Look at Bosnia, where between 92 and 96, 300,000 people have been slaughtered to death. Bosnians, Serbs, Croats, Muslims, all because they came from a slightly different heritage, or culture, or history. Look at Bombay, India, where in one maddening week in 92, 2,000 Indians, Hindus and Muslims, lost their lives fighting with one another. They fought over a mosque. They fought over a structure made of brick and mortar. 2,000 human beings lost their lives. Look at Africa, where between 92 and 96, 1 million Hutus and Tutsis lost their lives. Just comprehend that for one small second. Between the time you were a freshman and a senior, 1 million people lost their lives. Fighting over culture, over history, over background. Yes, just look at the madness around. The world has fought hard to highlight its differences. We have forgotten our inherent similarities. Why? All because what was missing was a little understanding, just a little sensitivity, just a little open-mindedness, just a little empathy. Two similar questions of culture in 92, two diametrically opposite results in 96. And so, to the class of 1996 I say, go and distinguish yourselves like never before. Go and get the best of jobs, the most rewarding of careers, go to the best of graduate programs, go and make a real difference in your communities. But not for one moment, ever forget the memory of these 4 years. The memory that just a little understanding, just a little sensitivity, just a little open-mindedness, just a little empathy on your part can mean the difference between complete despair for one young boy in Bosnia and remarkable hope for another young boy here at Richmond. Thank you.
Staring at a once beautiful valley, now filled with bodies that serve only as a reminder of the morning's gruesome events, a lonely gravedigger thinks to himself. Unable to fight in the Civil War because he is black, he can only bury the soldiers that fight and die for his freedom. In the movie Glory, this gravedigger is played by Morgan Freeman, and he is given his chance to fight as a member of the 54th Regiment of the Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. The Massachusetts 54th was the first black regiment of the Civil War. Led by Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, the 54th showed remarkable bravery, patriotism, and sacrifice. Even though the North was opposed to slavery, many Northerners held on to anti-black attitudes. Because of these attitudes, the 54th was given dangerous assignments and equipped with substandard or even broken equipment. Wearing shoes no better than wrapped cloth, tattered uniforms that did little or nothing to ward off the cold, and using guns that would misfire every other shot, the 54th still proved to be one of the bravest regiments in the Civil War. On top of their bravery, the members of the Massachusetts 54th exhibited the highest levels of patriotism. Despite the racism and other struggles they faced, they were proud to wear their uniforms and to carry the Union flag into battle. Their patriotism can best be seen when one observes the number of deserters from this regiment. None. Despite the thousands of desertions suffered by many other regiments on the northern side, not a single soldier deserted from the Massachusetts 54th. I have spoken so far of bravery and of patriotism, but it is the sacrifice of the 54th that has etched them into the pages of history. The sacrifice occurred during the assault on Fort Wagner in 1863. This heavily guarded Confederate fort lay on the beaches of South Carolina, nearly unapproachable. A frontal assault was needed to weaken the fort enough to allow for a full-scale attack. It was a suicidal mission, but the 54th volunteered for it. They were the first regiment to storm Fort Wagner, and so would suffer the highest casualties. Rushing forward, they reached the fort well before any reinforcements that were supposed to back them up. Believing the reinforcements to be close behind, the 54th attacked Fort Wagner and found nothing but the enemy. When the charge was over, more than 250 soldiers from the regiment had been killed, wounded, or captured. To join an army who didn't believe in you, to fight with an army who didn't like you, to die for an army who didn't respect you. This was the Massachusetts 54th. Today, they lay where they died, on the beaches of South Carolina. Colonel Shaw and his men were piled together in a mass grave, which has since been covered by the shifting tides of the Atlantic. A small statue stands in Boston, a reminder of their sacrifice. Bravery, patriotism, and sacrifice. These are qualities of the Massachusetts 54th. With the help of their efforts, along with all of the other black regiments that followed, slavery did eventually come to an end. In the movie Glory, Morgan Freeman talks of his chance to fight for the freedom of his own people. The 54th grasped this chance. They fought for it, and they eventually died for it. In the words of Union General Truman Seymour, "On every inch of the sands in front of Fort Wagner will be forever traced in undying glory the story of the determination and courage of the Massachusetts 54th.
In 1946, one of the greatest baseball players ever retired after almost 25 years as a pro. No, it wasn't Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, or any other star you've probably heard of. The man was James "Cool Papa" Bell, star of the Pittsburgh Crawfords of the Negro League. The Negro League was the name of the league where all black players were forced to play until 1947, when Major League Baseball became integrated. The Negro League had some of the best players never to be appreciated, and Cool Papa Bell headed that list. Many say that Bell was the fastest player ever to play the game. This could very well be true. He led the league in stolen bases almost every year he played until he retired at age 41. Satchel Paige, a former teammate of his, said that Cool Papa was so fast that he could flip the switch and be in bed before the lights went out. In fact, Jesse Owens, the Olympic sprinter who was known as the fastest man in the world, said that he would race and beat anyone around the bases as long as that person wasn't Cool Papa Bell. At 5 feet, 11 inches tall and only 135 pounds, Bell was a rail. But no one made fun of his slender size as he swiftly and smoothly stole second base or scored from first on a single. And Cool Papa was smooth. In his first game as a pro, the 17-year-old, then known as James, came into the game in the bottom of the 9th inning and struck out one of the league's best hitters on 3 straight pitches. Pretty smooth for a guy who wasn't even a pitcher. For playing with the savvy of a seasoned veteran, even though he was only a kid, his manager called him Cool Papa. But to say that Cool Papa had style would be an injustice to him. Cool Papa was style. Whether in his baseball uniform or his Sunday best, Cool Papa had a flair all his own. Now, some of you may have seen flip-down sunglasses, a necessity and fashion statement for many major leaguers today. Flip-down sunglasses weren't unknown to Cool Papa. After all, he invented them. But despite all of his baseball feats and the style with which he accomplished them, his greatest achievement was that he played at all. You see, James Cool Papa Bell was the victim of a disease known as racism. Racism that kept him from playing in the same league as white players. Racism that kept him from being in the same record books as white players. Racism that kept him from earning the same money as white players. In fact, to make ends meet, Cool Papa would run home after each game just so he could change and get to his second job as a nighttime security guard. This kind of thing would be unheard of for players today. But despite the inequalities he faced, Cool Papa kept on playing the game he loved. He helped pave the way for Jackie Robinson, the first African American in the major leagues, and others who followed him. Cool Papa did this by fighting racism the same way he played baseball, stylishly but effectively. Despite knowing that he would never reach his dream of playing in the major leagues just because of his color, Cool Papa Bell, and many others for that matter, played on, hoping that someday there would be only one league, a league of professional baseball players regardless of race. So let's take a few moments, which is longer than it would take for Cool Papa to steal second base, to appreciate James Cool Papa Bell, the speedy baseball star, the stylish innovator, the man who fought racism just by going to work every day.
It's move-in day. While everyone is rushing around carrying boxes, computers, TVs, and stereos to make their dorm rooms feel a little more like home, my mom is carrying wind chimes. Don't wind chimes belong outside, in a garden, on a patio, anywhere but a dorm room? She had strategically placed them so that each time I opened the door, it would swing into them. It was all because of Feng Shui. According to Simon Brown, author of the book Practical Feng Shui, which literally means wind and water, is the art of designing your home to promote success in life, health, wealth, and happiness. Feng Shui originated in China over 4,000 years ago and is still practiced throughout the world today. While it may seem like only ancient Chinese philosophers can master this art, even college students like us can learn simple techniques for improving the flow of energy in our dorm rooms, homes, or apartments. With my mom's enthusiasm behind me, I decided to research this topic some more on my own. First, I'll explain a little bit more about what Feng Shui is, and then give you some tips on putting this ancient art into practice. As I mentioned in my introduction, the ancient Chinese art of Feng Shui is a method of maximizing energy flow by manipulating your environment. Pam K. Tollefson, director of Feng Shui design, believes that Feng Shui changes and harmonizes the environment. There are many components of Feng Shui, the most important of which is Qi. According to Sarah Rosbach, author of the book Feng Shui, The Chinese Art of Placement, Qi is defined as the energy flow that connects all things, and it has a profound impact on our lives. Simon Brown describes Qi as carrying thoughts, ideas, emotions, dreams, and energy from the environment. Practitioners of Feng Shui maintain that it can move through air, people, buildings, windows, and doors. The flow of Qi is the basis of Feng Shui. The aim of Feng Shui is to improve this Qi, which is accomplished by altering your surroundings. There's good and bad Qi that flows throughout buildings such as this one. For example, the sharp corners on this lectern create negative Qi because sharp corners cause Qi to swirl, creating confusion or illness. Another problem in this room is that there are no windows. Sunlight is crucial because it's the main medium that keeps Qi moving. According to its followers, Feng Shui has many benefits once a home or office is arranged according to the principles of Feng Shui. Decreased stress and a better night's sleep is one advantage. Improved health, motivation, relaxation, love, and romance can even occur. Feng Shui helps create more harmonious family relationships. Overall, it can help you feel more in control and might even win you fame and respect. Nancy Lee Wydra, author of the book Feng Shui, 150 Simple Solutions for Health or Happiness in Your Home or Office, believes that Feng Shui is beneficial in the workplace as well. Balanced Qi creates a good start to a new career and growing business, while evenly circulated Qi throughout the body can help you to be more assertive in the workplace. Now that we've taken a look at what Feng Shui is, let's put this newfound knowledge into practice. To illustrate, we'll look at how Feng Shui works in a typical dorm room. Since we don't have control over the actual structure of our dorm room, we're forced to work with what we have. Let's start with the ideal floor covering. Winifred Gallagher in The Power of Place says that soft materials slow Qi energy and create a relaxing atmosphere. Few dorm rooms are carpeted, so make sure to cover your floor with a soft fitted carpet. Next, we'll look at the placement of your bed in your dorm room. In Practical Feng Shui, Simon Brown claims that the direction you sleep in affects your whole life, as well as how well you sleep. Feng Shui recommends having the head of the bed face east because it's good for career building, ambition, getting things done, and ideal for growth. Or, if you're having trouble sleeping, try having the head of the bed face north. This will enhance feelings of peace, tranquility, and spirituality. No matter what direction the head of your bed faces, make sure that you can see the door and the windows from your bed. Once it's located in the ideal position, make sure to cover your bed with cotton, linen, or silk sheets to create a harmonious flow. Synthetic materials have a negative effect on Qi. Finally, keep your curtains tightly closed at night to slow the flow of Qi energy through your window. Now that we've looked at the possibilities with what's already in your dorm room, let's see what we can add to enhance the already flowing Qi. For starters, try adding a wide mirror on one end of your dorm room to reflect Qi energy across the entire room. Most dorm rooms provide harsh electric lighting. To soften this light, bring in lamps with shades on them. You can also add simple elements to enhance the already flowing Qi. Plants are always a good addition because of their soothing effect. As my mom insisted, try placing wind chimes next to your door so they sound each time you open it. Larry Lapone, author of Feng Shui, Therapy for the New Millennium, says that wind chimes cleanse and purify the Qi energy already in the room. In addition to hanging wind chimes near your door, you can hang crystals such as this one in a window. The crystals bring energy from the outside environment into your dorm room. Adding water, such as a bowl of water or a fish tank, can also bring fresh Qi energy into the room. If you place a bowl of water in your room, place it in the east or the southeast and refill it every day. According to advocates of Feng Shui, this water element can help you attain your goals and might even help you study for those midterms. Finally, for those of you who tend to be a bit messy, beware. Untidiness slows the flow of Qi energy. Make sure to store everything in cupboards or storage areas and remember to stay organized. In conclusion, we have taken a look at one of China's most time-honored traditions. We've seen what Feng Shui is and then put this ancient art into practice. Although we looked at how Feng Shui works in a typical dorm room, you can apply the principles of Feng Shui to your home, office, or apartment. Now as I walk in my dorm room, I no longer cringe at those wind chimes loud clanging or avoid touching them at all costs. Instead, I swing the door right into them and smile. It may be noisy, but it sure is good Qi.
The time is now. Imagine your mother or father has suffered a heart attack. Deprived of its vital blood supply, a part of their heart is dying. Or imagine your grandmother or grandfather lying nearly motionless in their nursing home bed. Advanced age complicated by pneumonia is about to end their lives. Or imagine a close friend has just entered the hospital with a massive system-wide infection. AIDS has left their body ravaged by multiple diseases. For most people, these circumstances would herald the end of life. Today's medicine can no longer help them. But all of you may be able to meet again in the far future. Does this sound like science fiction? Perhaps, but it may one day be possible. How? Through the process of cryonics. Cryonics is the process of freezing human beings after death in the hope that medical science will be able to revive them in the future. Intrigued by the prospect of being cryonically frozen, I've spent some time researching the subject of cryonics. After reading dozens of newspaper and magazine articles, I would like to give you a brief overview of the history, methods, and future of cryonics. Let's start with the development of cryonics. Although the idea of freezing people is a new idea, the notion of preserving them is old. In the 1770s, for example, Ben Franklin wrote that he wanted to be immersed in a cask of Madeira wine till that time when he could be recalled to life. It was not to be, but Franklin's dream, at least, lived on to be revived in our time as cryonics. Cryonics has been a staple of science fiction novels, the plot device in numerous movies such as Austin Powers and Sleepers, and the subject of countless newspaper and magazine articles. Until 1964, however, cryonics remained firmly in the realm of fiction. It was at this time that physics professor Robert Ettinger argued in the book The Prospect of Immortality that cryonics was indeed possible. 3 years later, January 12, 1967, 73-year-old James H. Bedford became the first human being to be frozen. Ever since Bedford was frozen, cryonics has steadily increased in popularity. Currently, there are 4 cryonic institutions in the United States, 2 in California and 1 each in Michigan and Arizona. So far, 80 people have already been frozen from around the world, and another estimated 800 have signed up to be frozen when they die. Their aim is to remain frozen in a state of suspended animation, perhaps for centuries, in the hope that medical science will be able to revive them in the future, at a time when cures exist for virtually all of today's diseases, and when restoration to full function and health is possible. So you're probably wondering, how will they do it? How does cryonics work? Currently, when a person who has signed up to be cryonically suspended dies, a specific procedure, which was outlined in the book Cryonics, Reaching for Tomorrow, must be carried out. First, before death, an individual must decide whether to have the entire body frozen or just the head. If the whole body is to be frozen, it must be preserved upon death. Immediately after death, ideally within a matter of minutes, the patient is connected to a heart-lung machine, and chemicals such as glucose and heparin are circulated with the oxygenated blood to help minimize the freezing damage. At the same time, the patient's internal temperature is reduced as quickly as possible using cold packs. If only the head will be frozen, a slightly different procedure must be carried out. The head must be surgically detached from the rest of the body and preserved in a separate container. You may be wondering, why would I only preserve my head? The answer is, with some diseases, the body is left in a very poor condition. If this is the case and you choose only to preserve your head, you do so with the belief that medical science will be able to create a healthy new body for you in the future. Once the head or body is ready for freezing, a liquid called a cryoprotectant, which works as an antifreeze of sorts to help prevent cell damage, is circulated through the body or head. Over a 20-day period, the patient is prepared for long-term storage by cooling the body or head to a temperature of negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. When this temperature is reached, the patient is stored in a steel cylinder of liquid nitrogen. According to an article in Omni magazine, at this temperature, biological function ceases and the patient will remain unchanged for hundreds of years. Now that we've explored the development of cryonics and how the freezing process works, you may wonder about questions such as how much it costs and whether people that are frozen can really be rethawed. According to an article in Fortune magazine, the cost of cryonic suspension ranges from $60,000 to $125,000. It can be creatively paid for by making the cryonic institution the beneficiary on your life insurance policy. These costs may seem rather steep, but as one cryonics member states, facing my own mortality turned out to be much harder than coming up with the cash to pay for the life insurance premiums. The cost is not the only issue. Even if you can afford the cost of being cryonically frozen, scientists have not yet worked out all of the details involved with freezing and rethawing. As explained by New Scientist magazine, the problem is that the freezing process itself inflicts a crippling amount of cellular damage by dehydrating cells and puncturing their delicate membranes. So far, there are only a few types of human tissue that can be successfully frozen and rethawed, including sperm, embryos, and bone marrow, which contain relatively few cells. It is not yet possible to freeze and rethaw complicated organs such as the heart or liver, not to mention a complete body or brain. What scientists need is a procedure that will allow them to reduce the damage inflicted by the freezing process. And in fact, scientists are currently working on this procedure. Research is being done in the hope of finding better cryoprotectants or antifreezes, which will reduce the cell damage caused by freezing. According to the book, Cryonics, Reaching for Tomorrow, scientists are also developing microscopic machines that are capable of repairing cells at the molecular level. These machines might one day make it possible to repair the cell damage caused by the freezing process and thus bring frozen patients back to full life. Until that time, the people that are already frozen will have to remain in their current state of suspended animation in the hopes that science will one day work out solutions to the problems involved with freezing and rethawing. In closing, we have seen that cryonics is much more than a plot in a science fiction novel. It has developed from a wholly unrealistic fantasy to the point that 80 people have already been frozen, and hundreds more have made the choice to be cryonically frozen when they die. If scientists can ever figure out how to freeze and rethaw people successfully, we can be sure that cryonics will become much more popular. So think again of your father or mother suffering a heart attack, your grandmother or grandfather dying of pneumonia, or your close friends stricken with AIDS. If they chose to be buried or cremated in traditional fashion, their physical minds and bodies would be destroyed. That is absolutely certain. By contrast, being cryonically frozen offers some small chance that they may be revived in the future. Even if this chance is small, it is more than no chance at all.
I was Julie's best friend. I watched Julie grow from a little girl who was doted on by her parents into a tomboy who carried frogs in her pockets. Then, I watched her become a young woman, fussing with her hair and trying on every outfit in her closet before her first date. I always wanted to be just like Julie. But then, something went terribly wrong. Julie's shiny hair became dull and brittle. Her eyes lost their sparkle, and she didn't smile that brilliant smile anymore. I watched now as she stepped onto the scale 7 times a day, wore baggy clothes to cover her shriveled frame, and kept muttering about losing those last 2 stubborn pounds. Julie had become anorexic. 1 in every 100 teenage females in America suffers from anorexia, and the New York Times says this number is rising by 5% every year. Although this disease does strike men, says the Times, 90% of its victims are women, and 44% of those victims are college-age females. From my research and my personal experience with Julie, I've discovered that anorexia is an extremely serious disease that strikes many Americans. Today, I will tell you what anorexia is, what causes it, and what methods are used to treat it. Let's start by examining what anorexia is. Anorexia nervosa, one of a number of eating disorders, is a disorder of self-starvation. Simply put, the person who is anorexic refuses to eat normal amounts of food. An article in Maclean's stated that there are 4 characteristics of all anorexics. 1. Refusal to maintain a normal body weight. 2. Loss of more than 15% of original body weight. 3. A distorted image of one's own body. And 4. An intense fear of becoming fat. The refusal of anorexics to eat has many serious physical consequences. Hair and skin become dry and brittle, and a fine growth of hair may cover the entire body in an attempt to compensate for a lowered body temperature. As the anorexia progresses, lack of calcium causes bones to become brittle and break easily. According to an article in Sports Illustrated, the x-rays of a young person who has been anorexic for 5 to 6 years and those of a 70-year-old are almost identical. Lack of nutrition can also cause brain damage, blackouts, and a decreased pulse rate. In the most severe cases, anorexia can prove fatal. In Julie's case, she suffered from many of the symptoms of anorexia. I saw her 5'7" frame drop to 86 pounds. She was weak and pale. Even in the middle of summer, she was cold all of the time. I just wanted to say to her, Julie, please, can't you see what you're doing to yourself? But like most anorexics, she just couldn't see. What causes people like Julie to become anorexic? Scientists have identified 3 main causes of anorexia. An article in Newsweek attributes the rise in cases of anorexia to the growing pressure in our society to be thin. Media constantly bombards us with images of thin people as ideals. Fat-free products and diet aids have become multi-million-dollar industries. These images, these industries, project the idea that being anything other than slender is something to be feared and shunned. The second major factor in causing anorexia is the personality of the victim and his or her reaction to the pressures of society. The book Dying to Please states that most anorexics fit a basic profile. Many are overachievers or perfectionists. They excel in school and are involved in a variety of extracurricular activities. They seek to please parents, teachers, and friends. Anorexics see being thin as a way to please others. In fact, most anorexics will limit their food intake to try to fulfill expectations of perfection from family and friends. A third possible cause of anorexia has only been discovered within the past year. Doctors at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine found that when anorexics don't eat, they experience a rise in the level of opiates, natural brain chemicals which produce a sense of happiness. The researchers also found that when anorexics do eat, their bodies produce higher than normal levels of serotonin, a brain chemical that causes a sense of anxiety. According to the doctors, these chemical changes may make anorexia as physically addictive for the anorexic as alcohol or drugs are for the alcoholic or drug addict. Julie always wanted to be perfect. She was prom queen, a straight-A student, and a member of every team, club, and organization imaginable. But then, Julie decided she needed to go on a diet. She started constantly comparing herself to pictures of models in magazines. Julie was just sure that if she could look like the models, her life would truly be perfect. But losing weight never really made Julie's life perfect. What kinds of treatment could have helped Julie and others like her? Treatment of anorexia is a lifetime process. According to Dr. Catherine Halmy, director of the Eating Disorders Clinic in New York Hospital, people think that eating disorders are minor disorders that can be overcome with a little willpower and effort, but these are serious, incapacitating illnesses that require professional intervention. Methods of treatment used to cure anorexia include group therapy, drug therapy, and individual counseling. In severe cases, hospitalization and force feeding are used to provide nutrition for the anorexic until he or she will eat a sufficient amount. Most anorexics are never cured, but must fight the disease daily. Another article in the New York Times states that more than 80% of anorexics will have several relapses before they are cured. Angie Melnick, a 14-year-old who has been anorexic for 2 years, stated, "If you could cure anorexia in 30 days, it would be a lot less trouble." As I mentioned before, for some anorexics, no treatment is effective. For 18% of diagnosed anorexics, the disease proves fatal. You have seen that anorexia is a serious disease with deep-seated causes and devastating, potentially fatal effects. Julie was one of those who couldn't beat anorexia. She died when she was only 17. We will never go to college together and share a dorm room. She will never fulfill her dream of becoming a nurse, and we will never grow old, living beside each other, watching our children grow up together. Anorexia killed my beautiful, vibrant friend.
Do you know what I just told you? The message I communicated probably escaped most of you. Communication through hand motions is something we do all the time without even thinking about it. For most of us, it's a supplement to spoken language. But for many deaf and hearing impaired people, sign language isn't just a supplement, it's a primary mode of communication. I'm not an expert in sign language, but I've been interested in it for several years. My father's the treasurer for a group of deaf and hearing impaired people, and I've attended some functions with that group. At those times, I had the chance to learn bits and pieces of sign language. I also had the chance to learn more in researching for this speech. In this speech, I'd like to first give you a bit of background about sign language. Then I'd like to teach you how to sign one important sentence, the one I started with. You are my friend. By sharing this sentence with you, I hope to help you see that sign language is just as expressive as spoken language. Let's start with a little background. There are two broad categories of sign language used in America. One is signed English, and the other is American Sign Language. Both use most of the same hand gestures. Signed English usually uses one hand gesture for each spoken word and presents them in the same order. On the other hand, American Sign Language, also called ASL, doesn't always have exactly one sign for each spoken word and might present them in a different order. This distinction will become clear during the demonstration. No one knows exactly how many people use sign language as their primary language today. The National Center for Health Statistics estimates that about 20 million Americans have some sort of hearing impairment. Depending on the exact definition of deafness, about 500,000 to 2 million of these people are deaf. Most sources agree that American Sign Language is the fourth most used language in the United States today, after English, Spanish, and French. Some people think that sign language is a primitive substitute for spoken language, but in fact, sign language is just as rich and expressive as spoken language. For example, Karen Nakamura states in the online Deaf Resources Library that American Sign Language should not be considered in any way to be a broken, mimed, or gestural form of English. According to Nakamura, ASL is a complex, full, and natural language in its own right, with its own beautiful grammar. Keeping these points in mind about sign language, let's return to the sentence I started with and see if we can learn the signs for you are my friend. First, make the sign for you with your right hand, extend your index finger, and just point at a classmate. The word R is actually interesting because it starts with the letter R. To make the sign for the letter R, extend your index finger and wrap your next finger around it. This is a sign for the letter R, and now we're going to make the word R. Just put your fingertips under your chin and arc outward. My is easy. It's just an open right hand. Put your palm inward on your chest. Friend's a little trickier. It takes both hands. Extend your index finger on each hand now with your other fingers folded down. And now bend each index finger. Now you're going to hook together, hanging the back and knuckles of your right hand outward from your left hand. And now reverse. Then back and knuckles of your left hand hanging outward from your right hand. Now please tell a classmate these 4 signs slowly. You are my friend. And now try to sign the whole sentence quickly. You are my friend. What you just learned was signed English. In American Sign Language, the word are is generally implied, so you wouldn't need to use it. So the sentence in ASL would usually just be, you're my friend. In closing, I hope you learned that sign language is just as expressive as spoken language. Think back to the way we signed friend. That sign isn't an arbitrary combination of empty symbols. It's a visual depiction of the way friends really are, interdependent, interlocked. In addition to learning how to sign the sentence, you are my friend, I hope you also take away from this speech a new appreciation for the complexities of sign language.
Imagine this. You're at home enjoying dinner with your family when you glance around the table and you notice your uncle suddenly has a painful and terrified look in his eyes. He grabs his chest and moments later falls to the floor unconscious. Would you know how to handle the situation while everyone else around you is panicking? Would you know that your uncle was probably suffering from a heart attack and needed cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR? As a lifeguard, I was required to become certified in CPR, so I have been certified for 4 years. In an emergency such as this, it is not your job to treat the illness, but you are to keep the victim alive until trained medical professionals can come and take over for you. Tonight, I want to explain to you the life-saving process of surveying an emergency, contacting an emergency medical service, and starting CPR if needed. Let's start with the first step of surveying an emergency. According to the American Red Cross, the first step in any emergency is to survey the scene. The most important thing to remember in administering first aid is to make sure you and the victim are safe. You don't want to put yourself or the victim in any more danger. If it is safe to proceed and the victim is not moving, check the victim for responsiveness. Call the victim's name if you know it. Shake him or her and ask if he or she is okay. Then call for help. Now that you have checked out the scene and know the victim is unconscious, the second step in any emergency is to contact an emergency medical service. An emergency medical service can be any number of contacts. If the service is offered in your area, call 911. But if 911 isn't offered in your town, call the hospital or the police directly. And if you do not have those numbers, you can always call the operator and he or she will contact you with the correct officials right away. Designate one person to contact EMS. If there is no one around, you must call the emergency medical service yourself. Give them your name, address, the victim's name, condition, and the aid being given. It's particularly important to remember to let the dispatcher hang up first so you know that he or she has no more questions and an ambulance can be sent right away. After the EMS has been called, return to the victim. First, position the victim. Move the victim in the correct position, trying to keep the person's body as stable as possible, protecting the head and the back in case there has been any injury to the backbone or to the spinal cord. Position yourself next to the victim's shoulders. Then check the ABCs. Open the airway, check the breathing, and check the circulation or the pulse. First, open the airway. Take the hand that's closest to the victim's head and put it on their forehead. Next, take 2 fingers of the other hand and put it on the bony part of their chin. Tilt back. Next, check for breathing. Look, listen, and feel for the breath. Look for the chest rising and falling. Listen for the breath in your ear and feel the breath on your cheek. Do that for about 5 seconds. If there is no breathing, you must give 2 full breaths right away. Take 2 fingers of the hand that's on the victim's forehead and pinch the nose shut. Then take your mouth and seal the victim's mouth, giving 2 full breaths so that no air escapes while you're trying to breathe. Then check the circulation or check the pulse. Take 2 fingers and put it on the center of the victim's throat and slide it into the groove that's next to the throat. Do this for about 5 seconds. And if there is no pulse, chest compressions must be started right away. First, position your hands on the victim's chest. Take 2 fingers of the hand that's closest to the victim's feet and slide it up the bottom of the rib cage till you reach the notch that is directly beneath the breastbone. Then, take your other hand and place it right next to your 2 fingers. Weave your fingers inside your other hand. According to the American Red Cross, while keeping the correct hand position, straighten your arms and lock your elbows so that your shoulders are directly over your hands. While in this position, enough pressure will be created to compress the chest 1.5 to 2 inches for an adult. Do this 15 times, counting out loud. 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and, 5 and, 6 and. Continue the cycles of breathing and compressions 4 times. After the 4th time, check the victim's pulse again. And if there is still no pulse, continue these cycles until the victim breathes again or until trained medical professionals arrive and can take over for you. In conclusion, this short speech was to show you the importance of surveying an emergency, contacting an emergency medical service, and starting CPR. If you take the course, you will learn more about the details of taking CPR. Now, let's go back to the emergency in the beginning of my speech. Because of your knowledge of the 3 steps in administering CPR, you can be that vital link in an emergency, and you can help save a life.
In China, there's a saying, you won't be considered a great person until you've been to the Great Wall. Well, I visited the wall last year while I was in China. I don't know if it made me a great person, but I do know that the wall is indeed great. As you can see from this photograph, the wall is great in beauty, with its long arms resting on rolling hills and its towers peering across the valleys. The wall stretches across more than half of China, from the sea in the east past Beijing to Gansu province in the west. At a total length of 4,000 miles, it is the longest human-made construction in the world. If the Great Wall were transported to the United States and stretched out in a straight line, it would run from New York City completely across the Atlantic Ocean, past Spain, England, and France, and all the way to Berlin, Germany. Today, I would like to share with you some of the wonders of the Great Wall. I will focus on the 3 major stages of its construction, moving from the first phase during the Qin dynasty to the second phase during the Han dynasty, and concluding with the third phase during the Ming dynasty. Let's start more than 2,000 years ago, when the first parts of the wall were built. The beginning of the Great Wall as we know it dates to 221 BC, when Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered his top general to lead 300,000 soldiers in rebuilding and connecting separate old walls that had been built by princes of warring states. In just 12 years, Qin had a 3,000-mile wall using primarily wood frames filled with stones and compacted earth. While the wall proved effective in keeping out the tribes who threatened to invade China from the north, it created dissent within China. According to Arthur Waldron's The Great Wall of China, From History to Myth, ditches on the roadside were filled with corpses of men who had been forced into construction of the Great Wall. Compelled into hard labor and burdened by heavy taxes to finance the project, the people grew unhappy, and a year after Qin's death, the peasants revolted. While the wall stood, the empire collapsed. The second major period of construction for the Great Wall occurred during the Han Dynasty, which lasted from 206 BC to 220 AD. Emperor Wu Di ordered expansion of the existing wall to protect land won when his armies defeated the northern tribes. Workers added 300 miles to existing wall. They built wooden frames, which they filled with willow reeds and a mixture of fine gravel and water. As you can see from this picture of the ruins of the Han Wall, it was very different in construction and appearance from the Great Wall as it exists today. The third major building period of the Great Wall occurred 1,100 years later, during the Ming Dynasty. In 1368, during the first year of the Ming Dynasty, Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang ordered more expansion of the wall. Subsequent Ming emperors strengthened and extended the wall further until it reached its current length. Builders of the Ming Wall made three important architectural advancements, which resulted in the distinctive features of the wall as it exists today. You can see those features especially well in this photograph. First, rather than using earth and stone, they used kiln-fired bricks to create a stronger wall. Second, they erected more than 3,000 beacon towers to watch the mountain pass for potential invaders. These towers rise from the wall like mighty outposts and are one of the most striking aspects of the wall when you see them in person. Third, the Ming builders made the wall so large that it would be almost impossible to break through. In fact, the wall is so wide that soldiers could ride several horses abreast along the top of the wall. In conclusion, the Great Wall of China enjoys a rich history. Built over the course of more than 2,500 years during the Qin, Han, and Ming dynasties, it is a magnificent feat of human engineering. While the wall no longer continues to defend China from invaders, it does continue to play a central role in Chinese culture and international identity. Now that you know a little more about the wall, I hope you'll have a fuller appreciation of why it is regarded as great, not just in China, but throughout the world.
Perdóname, señor, me perdí. ¿Podría decirme cómo ir al Hotel del Sol? A few of you may know I just said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm lost. Could you tell me how to get to the Sun Hotel?" However, some of you may not, even though you had 3 to 4 years of Spanish in high school. I just have one question for you. Would you be able to get around in the foreign country where the language you studied was spoken? According to a class survey I conducted, all of you said that you studied a foreign language in high school, the majority of you for 3 to 4 years. Yet most of you do not have enough knowledge of the language to use it correctly. In addition, 92% of you said you thought it would have been more helpful to have started your foreign language study earlier. Today, I hope to convince you that knowledge of a foreign language is important and that it would be more beneficial to begin foreign language study earlier in our education. With the world economy globalizing and our country becoming increasingly multilingual, knowledge of a foreign language is now a necessity. Through my own experience and research, I have discovered that starting foreign language instruction in elementary school is most advantageous because our language acquisition skills are sharpest at that time. Let's begin with why knowledge of a second language is critical for the world today. The first reason such knowledge is critical is because it is essential for global communication. According to an article in Current Magazine, Americans both in and out of government proclaim the new global economy the defining reality of our age. With technology growing faster and faster, we have now become closer to our global neighbors than ever before. Governments and businesses will increasingly need workers who can communicate with our global partners in Latin America, Africa, and Europe. According to an article in the Foreign Language Annals, the number of foreign-based industries doing business in the United States has tripled in the last 10 years, while the U.S. has doubled overseas business. A recent issue of Career World states that some accountants at Chase Manhattan Bank and National City Bank must have a good grasp of foreign languages because these banks have branched out abroad. One study done in the Journal of Education for Business showed that among both United States and foreign firms, 51% of the responding firms would give hiring preferences to those accounting and business majors skilled in a foreign language. Not only is knowledge of a foreign language necessary for business communication, but the United States itself is a country of mixed cultures, nationalities, and tongues, and is growing more multilingual every day. According to Table 57 in the Statistical Abstract of the United States, people born in another country make up 9% of the American population. An article in the Population Bulletin states that 32 million people reported to the last United States Census that they spoke a language other than English at home. This number is larger than the populations of New York, Pennsylvania, and Colorado combined, and is 6 times larger than the number of people that live here in Wisconsin. According to the Census Bureau, more than 17 million people in the U.S. speak Spanish as their primary language. In many parts of the country, knowledge of Spanish is becoming a vital day-to-day issue. Kathy Lemons, chairwoman of a foreign language department at an Arkansas high school, says, "When I talk to doctors, they wish they would have taken Spanish. When I talk to lawyers and business people, they say the same thing." But whether Spanish, Japanese, German, Italian, Chinese, or Polish, it is obvious that proficiency in another tongue is needed. To fulfill this need, I propose a solution that mandates state governments to require foreign language instruction in all elementary schools. The program I advocate is called FLES, F-L-E-S, the Foreign Languages in the Elementary Schools program. This program is based mostly on the spoken word versus writing and interpretation, and it starts teaching foreign languages as early as the 1st grade or even kindergarten. It's important to note that much of foreign language instruction done in this program is very basic. Alwyn Bell, a French teacher at an Arkansas elementary school that has implemented the program, states that there's a lot of role-playing, singing, and chanting. Classroom teachers can easily take courses to learn how and what to teach the kids. It's not necessary for teachers to go back to school to get a degree in a foreign language. However, teachers should take instructional courses so that they have opportunities for continued professional growth. This program is working in Arkansas and other states. North Carolina, Oklahoma, Montana, and Arizona either have or are planning to institute similar programs. It is time for the rest of the U.S. to follow their lead. This would be a huge change in American education, but it's something that is necessary if students are to be prepared for the world they will live in. For years, European and Asian countries have begun mandatory English in early grades. Other English-speaking countries, such as Australia, do extensive foreign language training in the early grades of their schools. Foreign language instruction works in these countries, and it can work in the U.S. as well. In fact, there is abundant evidence that the optimum time to learn a foreign language is before the age of 10, because the brain is most receptive at this time. According to the book, Teaching Foreign Languages to the Very Young, specific skills, such as the ability to distinguish between sounds and to reproduce them, are more effective before the age of 10. The same book states that after the age of 6, the capabilities for pronunciation rapidly begin to deteriorate. John Silber, Chancellor of Boston University and the Chairman of the Massachusetts Board of Education, remarks, "It is quite clear that remarkable competence in a language can be achieved in 3 years. If these years are the ages 3, 4, and 5, there is no question that for the average child trying to become bilingual, the earlier the better." Finally, although some people wonder whether early foreign language instruction gets in the way of learning other subjects, according to the book Foreign Languages and the Elementary School Child, experiments done in public schools in Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and New York showed that learning foreign languages had no adverse effects on achievement in subject areas such as math and social studies. In some cases, kids who had foreign language instruction performed better in subjects such as spelling, reading, arithmetic, and language usage. Furthermore, studying a foreign language can help kids better understand those outside their own culture and aid them in becoming more tolerant. Cuando visitamos un país extranjero, estamos suponiendo que alguien habla inglés. Depende de un diccionario. To put it in English, when we visit a foreign country, are we to expect that someone will speak English? Depend on a foreign language dictionary? People from other countries know to expect little from Americans as far as speaking foreign languages. However, it is time to stop this stereotype. As we have seen, there is strong evidence that knowledge of a second language is vital for interaction both within the United States as well as on a global scale. We can provide that knowledge by instituting foreign language study in all elementary schools. Evidence shows that this is the best time to begin foreign language acquisition, and that instruction in a second language can even help in learning other subjects. With this in mind, hopefully one day, when our children are lost somewhere in a foreign country, unlike their parents before them, they will know exactly what to say and do.
You're tired. You're hungry. You've just spent a long day at college library and you can't wait to get back to your room. Glancing outside, you remember how quickly it becomes dark. You don't think much of it, though, as you bundle up and head out into the cold and gusty wind. Not until you spy the shadows on the sidewalk, or hear the leaves rustling beside you, do you wish that you weren't alone? You walk quickly, trying to stop your imagination from thinking of murderers and rapists. Only when you are inside your room do you relax and try to stop your heart from pounding out of your chest. Can you remember a time when you felt this way? I would be surprised if you never had. The FBI reported last year that there were 3 murders, approximately 430 aggravated assaults, 1,400 burglaries, and 80 rapes here in Madison alone. And while these statistics are quite alarming, they don't even compare to the numbers of larger metropolitan areas. No matter where we live, crime affects us all. Men and women, students and instructors, young and old. We need to stop being the victims. One way we can do this is by enrolling in a self-defense course. Now, there were many times that I can remember where my heart seemed to pound out of my chest. But because I took an introductory course to self-defense, I feel more confident and more prepared to deal with potentially dangerous situations. Today, I would like to encourage all of you to enroll in a self-defense course. Let's start by looking at the dangers of crime that we face as college students. College students face many crime issues, both as members of society and as students on campus. These crimes endanger our money, our property, our self-confidence, our psychological well-being, and even our lives. According to the Foundation for Crime Prevention Education, violence and crime has dramatically increased. An American is 6 times more likely to be assaulted with a weapon today than in 1960. And the FBI reports that someone is either murdered, raped, assaulted, or robbed every 16 seconds. That means today, at the end of our 50-minute class period, approximately 187 people will have been victims of a violent crime. College students, many of whom are away from home for the first time, are especially easy targets. Students often look at campus housing as a secure place to be, but according to the book, Street Wisdom for Women, precautions must be taken in a dorm or Greek house just as in any house or apartment. How many of these bad habits do you have? How often do you leave your room without locking your door, forgetting how easily accessible your room is to anyone? How often do you fall asleep without locking your door? Or how often do you open your door without first checking to see who is there? As the Wake Forest University Police Crime Prevention website states, each of us must become aware of the precautions necessary to reduce the likelihood that we will become victims of crime. Those who forget to take these precautions invite trouble. But although students must watch themselves in campus housing, they must also take care elsewhere. Prevalent use of drugs and alcohol, especially in college campuses, increases the chance of crime. Using drugs or alcohol makes you an easier target because, as we all know, it affects our judgment, influencing our decisions on safety. According to the Pacific Center for Violence Prevention, in 42% of all violent crimes, either the assailant, the victim, or both had been drinking. Specifically on campus, 90% of all violent crime involves drugs and/or alcohol. This problem is so serious, in fact, that testimony by law enforcement officials reprinted on the Security on Campus website indicates that many college campuses are the highest crime areas in the community. So now that we see the dangers we face as students, what can we do to protect ourselves? Although there are many ways of dealing with crime, I recommend that you and every college student enroll in a self-defense course. You can choose from among a variety of self-defense courses offered right here in Madison, and you can find one to fit your schedule and your pocketbook. On campus, the university has a club sport called Shorin-Ryu Karate, which emphasizes practical self-defense. They hold their meetings in the evenings after classes right on campus, and they're open to all university students, faculty, and staff. Another option is Valari's Self-Defense and Tai Chi Center, which not only offers its courses in self-defense, but in Tai Chi, Karate, and Kung Fu. And Valari's location right on State Street is convenient for all university students. To find a class that fits your needs, you can search over the internet or through the Yellow Pages. I also brought along some brochures today, so if you are interested, please see me after class. After enrolling in a self-defense course, you will find yourself much better prepared to deal with an emergency situation. Patrick Lee, instructor for a course called Self-Defense for Women, Victim or Survivor, claims the biggest thing he teaches in his courses is you must decide from the beginning, do you want to be the victim or the survivor? Repeating over and over again that I am a survivor not only increases your self-confidence, but helps you think more clearly in a difficult situation. I didn't realize the importance of this myself until I took an introductory course in self-defense through my high school physical education class. After a few days of practice, we were to each face the notorious padded attacker. Expecting to enjoy fighting the attacker, I prepared to yell, "No! Stop!
back off, as forcefully as possible. But before I knew it, this man, twice my size, had put me in a move I could not get out of. And my mind was so overcome with fear that I could barely muster out a no. And immediately I pictured this as a real situation, one which I probably wouldn't have survived. But after a few more days of practice, we were able to go against the patterned attacker one more time. And this time, I no longer felt scared. I felt anger. I was angry that this man felt he could take advantage of me. And this time, using what I learned, I successfully yelled, "No, back off," and successfully escaped his move. And this time, I survived. But I'm not the only example showing the benefits of self-defense. If you're interested, check out stories from self-defense classes, posted to the internet by the Assault Prevention Information Network. Although I don't have the time to share with you the dozens of success stories, I can sum them up with a quote by Cindy, a 23-year-old woman who used her self-defense knowledge to scare off an assailant. Cindy says, "I know deep inside where it matters most that I have what it takes to protect myself if need be. And this feeling is one of pure joy." So as you can see, self-defense is time and money well invested. So I encourage you to enroll in a self-defense course, whether it be through a physical education class or through a private organization, whether you do it here in Madison or back in your hometown. Even if you do not enroll right away, I encourage you to do so in the near future. Taking such a course could mean keeping your money, protecting your property, protecting yourself, your boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife. It could even mean the difference between life and death. Don't ever think it could never happen to me. Why not be prepared? As Patrick Lee said, ask yourself, do you want to be the victim or the survivor?
Are you at least 17 years old? Do you weigh more than 110 pounds? Do you consider yourself fairly healthy? If you answered yes to all these questions, you should be donating blood every 2 months. In my survey of the class, I found that only 50% of you have ever donated blood before, and that only 1 out of 13 of you donate on a regular basis. The lack of participation of eligible donors is a serious problem that requires immediate action. Through extensive research and 2 years of faithfully donating blood, I've come to realize the magnitude of this problem and just how easy the solution can be. Today, I would like to show why blood donors are in such desperate need and encourage you to take action to combat this need. Let's first take a look at the overwhelming need for blood donors. The lack of participation of eligible blood donors poses a threat to the lives of many Americans. According to the American Red Cross web pages, where I've obtained an enormous amount of information, in the United States alone, someone undergoes a blood transfusion once every 3 seconds, which amounts to 3,000 gallons of blood every hour, day and night. People who benefit from donations range from cancer patients, to organ transplant patients, to surgical patients. Even premature infants and trauma victims benefit from donations. The need for blood never takes a vacation, and neither should donors. Let me tell you about Brooke, a 3-year-old girl with long, curly blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Brooke is a victim of cancer and had major surgery to remove the large tumor in her abdomen. She has spent approximately half of her life in the hospital, receiving chemotherapy and other treatments for infections that resulted from a decrease in her white blood cell count after each session. According to the Texas Children's Hospital, Brooke's treatment will require blood products with a replacement value of 508 units of blood, of which only 250 units have been replaced. She still needs 250 units of blood to continue her treatment. If she doesn't receive this blood, she will not live to attend kindergarten, to go to the prom in high school, or to get married, luxuries we all too often take for granted. Cases like Brooke's are becoming all too common these days, with only 1 in 20 eligible Americans donating blood, and the donor rate dropping steadily at 2% annually. These facts are particularly distressing, considering that nearly half of us here will receive blood sometime in our lives. You can now see the magnitude of the problem with the lack of blood donations. Fortunately, it is a problem that can be easily solved. Each and every one of you can be part of the solution. All you have to do to save priceless lives is go to the nearest Red Cross and donate your blood. For those of you who have never donated blood before, the process is so simple and easy. First, you fill out a donor information form that asks you questions about your sexual history and health. You will then receive a mini physical. They will take a drop of blood from your finger to measure the % of red cells in your blood. Then, they will take your blood pressure, as well as your temperature and pulse. So not only are you saving lives by donating blood, you are also checking on your own. After your physical, you will be asked from which arm you choose to donate. Then, you will be asked to lie in a donor chair. A staff member will clean your arm and insert a sterile, non-reusable needle, so there's no way to contract AIDS from donating blood. After a pint of your blood has been taken, which usually takes about 10 minutes, you'll be asked to relax for 10 to 15 minutes while you enjoy juice and cookies. The process is over, and in 8 weeks you can donate again. Many of you may be scared at the thought of the anticipated pain and needles. I admit I was terrified the first time I gave blood, but then I realized I was scared over nothing. The extent of the pain as they insert the needle is equivalent to someone scratching your arm for a brief second. And while the needle is in your arm, you don't even feel a thing. And as I stated before, it is impossible to contract AIDS from donating blood. Now that you know just how easy and safe the solution is to the lack of blood donations, let us take a look at just how much difference your donations can make. Every unit of blood you donate can save up to 3 lives. You see, the blood you donate is divided up 3 ways, into red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Each of these are stored separately and used for different types of treatment. Red blood cells are used to fight anemia. White blood cells are used to fight infections, while platelets are important to control bleeding and are used in patients with leukemia and other forms of cancer. The joy you get from helping 3 people can be increased many times over. You see, you can donate blood 6 times in a year. Those 6 donations can help as many as 18 people. Just think, if you donated for 10 years, you could help save the lives of nearly 180 people. Who knows, one of those lives could even be that of a friend, family member, or even your own, since you can now donate blood in advance of your own surgery. Now that you know what a difference just one donation can make, I want to encourage you to take action. I urge you to take a stand and become a regular blood donor. 45 minutes out of your day is a small price to pay for the lifetime of satisfaction you receive by knowing you may have saved a life. If you have never donated blood before, pull deep inside yourself and find some courage and become a proud wearer of the I am a first-time blood donor sticker. If you have donated before, think back to the feeling of pride you received from making your donation. Finally, I ask all of you to think of a loved one you hold so dear to your heart. Imagine they need a blood transfusion and there's a shortage of donations that day, so they cannot receive the treatment that they so desperately need, just like Brooke, the 3-year-old girl that I talked about earlier. Go to the nearest Red Cross in Madison, which is on Sheboygan Avenue, or attend the next blood drive here on campus. These blood drives are held in various parts of campus, including the dorms. In fact, the next drive will be held in the Ogg Residence Hall in 2 weeks. Please, take this opportunity to save lives and make yourself feel like $1 million. Give the ultimate gift, the gift of life. Donate blood.
For every morning that you wake up and eat breakfast, there are 840 million people beginning their daily struggle with chronic, persistent hunger. For every morning that you have the privilege of going to class, 250 million children head off to work, where many will make less than $1 a day. And for every day that this vicious cycle continues, there are 24,000 fewer people in our world. Millions of children living in developing countries cannot depend on their parents to support them. Rather, they live each day with little more than the hope that someone more fortunate than them might look on them with compassion. By sponsoring a child for 2 years through an organization called Compassion International, I've seen the difference that $28 a month can make in a child's life.
Today, I'd like to encourage you to become involved with Compassion International. First, I'll look at the desperate help children worldwide need. Second, I'll explain Compassion International and what it is they are doing to help meet the needs of these children. And finally, I'll show you that Compassion International is an upstanding, legitimate organization that will put your money to work saving the lives of children. Let's start by looking at the need for this organization. The demand for organizations such as Compassion International in developing countries is so great because of two main reasons: poverty and poor education. According to the World Bank website, it is poverty that causes 250 million children to work full or part-time jobs while they should be receiving an education. In Thailand, for example, the typical 11 to 15-year-old boy or girl is forced to work an average of 50 hours every week. Similarly, in Bangladesh, children who do not attend school work as long, if not longer, hours than adults by the time they reach just 13 years of age. According to a brochure sent to me by Compassion International, the average family income in Central America is $50 per month. Unfortunately, the cost of food in Central America is the same as it is in the United States. Because so few families can afford the cost of groceries, half of all children living in Central America are malnourished. 20% of them are so severely malnourished that improved diet alone will not cure them. Of course, the problem isn't limited to Central America. The Hunger Project website claims that worldwide, about 24,000 people die from hunger or hunger-related causes every day, and 3/4 of them are children under the age of 5. Put this into perspective. 24,000 deaths is equivalent to more than half the students on this campus dying every day. To think of it another way, it means that more children lose their lives to hunger every week than the number of Americans that lose their lives to cancer in an entire year. According to the Hunger Project, the best way to reduce hunger is through education, because the educated are best able to break out of the cycle of poverty that causes hunger. Once again, let's look at Central America. Most of the children in Central America are not required to go to school, and if they do go, it's rare that they ever make it past the 6th grade, because even public education is too expensive. This cycle is never ending. If children do not become educated, they will never be able to make enough money to break out of the cycle of poverty. However, this vicious cycle can be broken with the help of Compassion International. Compassion International was founded in 1952 by the Reverend Everett Swanson as a result of working with orphans in Korea. Swanson established a program through which people could sponsor needy Korean children for just a few dollars a month. Those children would receive benefits that included food, clothing, education, shelter, and health care. Since then, Compassion International has expanded to 22 countries and has assisted more than 500,000 children across the globe. Compassion International works in this way. In each community where there are sponsored children, there's a place called the Project. This is where the children go to receive nutritious meals and additional schooling. The projects are small, usually 150 children, and the local staff works hard to become personally acquainted with each sponsored child and his or her individual needs. Through providing them with an education now, Compassion is helping children to support themselves and their families in the future. When you sponsor a child, it is usually for several years until the child is either 18 or has completed their schooling. You can sponsor a child for just $28 a month and even have the option of paying several months to a year in advance. Compassion International understands that there may be a time when you can't support your child. This is why there's no obligation to continue your sponsorship. Compassion International claims that they will immediately look for a new sponsor for your child, and he or she will have continued support without interruption. I've been sponsoring a little boy named Jose Francisco for 2 years. He lives in Ecuador with a family of 7 and is 10 years old. I get about 3 letters a year from Jose, And it's clear from these letters that he's had new opportunities to learn and grow both physically and mentally. Being Jose's sponsor has been incredibly rewarding and is something that every one of us has the opportunity to do. At this point, most of you are probably thinking, how much of my money actually goes to helping my child? Any true skeptic would feel the same way. From my class survey, more than 50% of you thought that less than half of your money would go directly to your child. And I too was reluctant to sponsor a child at first for the same reason. And because of this, I read a report on compassion conducted by the Better Business Bureau. This report shows that 78% of your money goes directly to your child. Of the rest of your money, 9% goes towards fundraising, and the other 13% is for administration purposes and includes the increase in net assets. Another reassuring factor for me was that when I went to Compassion International's website, I discovered that they are audited both internally on a periodical basis and externally every year. Both of these audits help to ensure that funds are properly received, tracked, and managed for each child. From this evidence, it's clear that Compassion International is an upstanding organization and is deserving of its rank from Smart Money magazine as one of the top 10 charitable organizations in the entire country. So today, I'd like to encourage you to sponsor a child of your own through Compassion International. When you consider that $28 a month amounts to less than $1 a day, is this really too much to give to provide a child with an education, food, and health care that will help break the cycle of poverty? If $28 a month every month is still too much, I encourage you to provide a child with a one-time gift of $28. Your $28, whether you give it just once or every month, can help save a child's life and fill them with hope for the future. This is why the time to start thinking about sponsoring a child is right now, and the time to take action is today. If you're interested in sponsoring a child or want to find out more information, I'll be distributing brochures from Compassion International after my speech. May your compassion for the well-being of the world's children encourage you to open your heart and maybe even your checkbook. Because as Compassion International states, while we cannot individually change the world, we can change the world for one child.